Hey, welcome to Bible Floss. My name's Derek, and today we're going to film in my office rather than behind a green screen. And a bit of trivia for you. What do all offices of Canadians have in common? They all have a Tim Hortons coffee in them. This is a new segment called My Opinion, where I give you my opinion on a controversial subject, and then you give me your opinion in the comment sections below. The topic today is head coverings. Is it biblically prescribed for all people of all places at all times, or was it restricted to certain cultures at certain times? For example, when Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. It's important to remember the background of the culture at that time. For example, in Corinth, there was a popular fertility cult where the leaders of the cult were all women. They were prophetess, and they were known for having their heads uncovered and their hair long and down and strewn. But within the text itself of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 3 to 16, there are a whole bunch of things going on. For example, Paul begins with a discussion of hierarchy. Just as God is the head of Christ, and Christ is the head of man, and man is the head of woman. Paul, that chauvinist, but he redeems himself, fortunately, later on in the text where Paul says, nevertheless, just as woman came from man, so also men are born of woman, and all come from God. So that makes egalitarians everywhere happy. And also within the passage is this really mysterious reference to angels. Paul says, and because of the angels, out of nowhere. Like, what do angels have to do with the context? In fact, that reference has baffled scholars like forever. Like, nobody knows exactly what that reference means. But in my opinion, Paul assumed that his readers would have understood what it meant. So if his readers would have understood it, I gotta assume that if we try and put ourselves in the shoes of his readers, that we should be able to at least have some sort of a glimmer of hope of what he might mean by him because of the angels. And everyone who discusses this passage always seems to see it like in a bubble. Like, don't people realize that 1 Corinthians chapter 11 kicks off a discussion between 11 and 14 about church unity and church order? Paul's major concern within the whole thing is order and unity. So there are a few factors within 1 Corinthians chapter 11 that lead me to the conclusion that head coverings was a cultural, contextual thing. First, Paul says, doesn't nature itself show? And actually, yes and no. Paul's appealing to what they would have assumed to be a natural thing, but it's not always natural at all places at all times. For example, we wouldn't look at a guy today with long hair and say, well, he's got no glory about him. We're like, that's offensive. We wouldn't do that today. We wouldn't look at a woman who has her head shaved because maybe she got cancer and say, well, she's got no glory about her. The second clue to me that this passage is set for its historical context is the final statement that Paul makes ending this entire discussion of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 3 to 16, where he says, if anyone is contentious about this, we have no other practice, neither do the churches of God. Because the passage kicks off Paul's discussion and his concern here is unity amongst the body of believers, it seems to me that what's going on is that Paul's saying, look, all the churches of God wear head coverings. And so you should too also, for one, to maintain unity, and for two, to avoid offense. Now, if that line of reasoning is correct, if that's Paul's intent and heart within this passage, if that's Paul's message, then I would suggest that to enforce head coverings, or to think that head coverings is universally applicable today, actually goes against the thrust of the passage. Because churches today do not universally wear head coverings or endorse head coverings. In fact, it's almost an anomaly today because the culture is different. And so to wear head coverings today, you might very well hear Paul say, I would commend you not to wear head coverings today because the church does not practice doing that. So enforcing head coverings today might actually result in disunity and in causing offense, which goes right against the thrust of what Paul's trying to do in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and 11 to 14. And this leads us back to the question of what he means by and because of the angels. Here's my suggestion. Scholars have no idea what that reference means, but I assume that the people of Corinth, when they read the letter, Paul understood that they would have had a natural assumption to what it meant. So this is just my opinion, but I think that the phrase, and because of the angels, is a reference to humans, messengers. Because the word ha-angelos, the Greek word that is translated as angel here, simply means messenger. And it could be referring to either spiritual beings or human beings. For example, Matthew 11:10, I'm going to read right from my iPad here. It says, I will send my messenger ahead of you, and he will prepare your way before you. The word there for messenger is ha-angelos. And it's referring to John the Baptist, not an angelic being. And it's the exact same word that's used here in 1 Corinthians. If what I'm saying is correct, it makes sense to me because Paul's concern, again, within this entire passage, Paul's heart, what he's addressing is order and unity amongst the body of churches. He's saying all the churches wear head coverings, so your woman should wear head coverings too. He says also, and because of the messengers, because of the people who travel from one church to another, if they come to your church and they see that your women aren't wearing head coverings and all the other churches are, then they're going to be spreading that idea, and it's going to create conflict and disorder and perhaps even mayhem. And that's exactly what Paul is trying to avoid. So there you have it. That's my opinion on women and head coverings in the church in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. What's your opinion? How do you interpret this passage? Is head coverings cultural? Does it depend on your context? Or are they universally prescribed for all women of all ages, of all times? Let me know in the comment sections below. And click right here to subscribe. And as they say in the Bible, shalom. Thanks for watching.